Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 622. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Shawn Whalen, drnorge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim, the sensei of the whatnot, the Duke of the Sultan of Strategery, the indestructible bridge-defying questions when Shawn has awkward pauses and references the spin-off podcast I Am Whatnot, because he is the elder statesman of the podcast Segulin.
How's it going, eh?
Jim, on this episode, we're going to be talking about Batman Fear State Omega and really just an overarching view on how the whole Batman universe tied into that event and its conclusion. We also talk about the new era, beginning with Batman issue number 118. We are sponsored, as always, by DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. Mr. Segulin, what is going on over at DCBService.com?
Well, you know I love the words 50% off, and we have Gotham Central Omnibus. That is the full series hardcover, 50% off, only $49.99. And we have Batman Volume 5, Fear State hardcover, 50% off, only $12.49. Thank you, DCBS.
Over at InStockTrades.com, it's always a spot I go to check out new releases. The Batman Urban Legends trade paperback Volume 1 is available. This is a $24.99 trade paperback. 42% off, only $14.49. Saga of the Swamp Thing box set. This is $120 regularly. It's 42% off, only $69.60. The Swamp Thing Volume 1, The Becoming. $16.99 regularly, 42% off, only $9.85. If you're looking for a great way to save money on some of the books that you missed pre-ordering, InStockTrades.com is your place to go. I'd love to thank both companies for continuing to support our show. I'd like to shout out a Kickstarter if I could, and it's in its last 7 days. And this one is called Ignition. It's by a longtime friend, Shawn Pryor. And Shawn, Jim and I have known for years through podcasting, through the convention circuit. Just a really terrific guy. Does a lot of really cool creative own work. Ignition 1 through 3, this is the finale, issue number 3. The nice part about this Kickstarter, it's some of my favorites, you have an opportunity in this Kickstarter to get all 3 issues. So this is your first exposure to it. But this is this cool, high-speed, transporter-style story. I love action movies, and this has that action movie kind of feel to it. We've got links in the show notes to the Ignition Kickstarter. Please consider supporting it. Also, please shout it out. One of the things we don't do on this podcast, we don't ask people for financial support or anything like that, but we do ask if you could. This is where our network and our community really can help somebody else who's one of us. Please help Shawn by getting the word out about his Kickstarter. Social media, any of your ways that you can shout it out, forums that you're in. I'm not asking you to blast forums that have already had this put out there before, but if you know in your social media that there's people who would like this type of story that wouldn't otherwise be exposed to it, get that word out that way. Help Shawn get the word out and get him over the hump. He's at about 72% of his goal right now, and in these next 7 days we can make an impact. And I've always been proud of our audience's ability to network and get the word out. You may not be able to financially support this right now, but you know people who this is their cup of tea and they're not aware of it. We all have our first exposure. I find out about Kickstarters really from following people. That's how I find out about ones that I have a common interest in. So please get the word out about this one, whether it's something that you want to support yourself or you know friends who will support it because it's the thing that they've been looking for, and help Shawn get this over the hump. That's something we can do to help one of our own. Jim, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plot lines, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing on today's show. So if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
Well, you are really in the festive Christmas spirit, aren't you? I like it. Let's talk some comics. Hey, Jim, I'd like to start off this week by talking about some of the news that came out about George Perez. I didn't realize that he was fighting a cancer battle until this week when there was a letter that was released from George Perez to the fans. I shared that letter with you because it was one of the coolest letters I think I've ever read from somebody who's going through a battle of that nature. It was really hopeful and uplifting, and which amazes me. Both of my parents passed from lengthy cancer battles. I'm aware of the strength that it takes to go through that, from seeing them go through it. I don't want to any further, I should say, poorly paraphrase his letter. I think it's something you should seek out and read. But I felt like we'd be remiss if we didn't mention it, because so recently, on episode 600, we talked about the JLA-JSA crossover that was really my first exposure to him. And we're going back when I was like 9 years old. And I didn't know writers. I didn't know artists. And didn't realize that that story is like so foundationally important, not only to my love of comics, but during a time of my life where I was this geeky, awkward kid, didn't have a lot of friends, and didn't much like myself. And I was finding hope and excitement in these stories that were being crafted that gave me this idea that you could be something more. George's artwork has been with me since that initial JLA-JSA crossover, through New Teen Titans, through Wonder Woman, and became quickly, through those particular works, when I was a little bit older, started to recognize names. He started being someone I'm like, I love this guy's art. I've got to follow him to everything that he does. I had the good fortune of meeting him at the Pittsburgh Comic-Con. He was doing that Comic-Con at that time for charity, where if you did sketches, the idea was that you donated. If you got a sketch from him, you donated to a charity that he was behind, and that was what he was there for. And I thought that was really a cool reason. At this point, he'd made it. His purpose for being there was truly just to support this charity and a chance to sit down with fans. I'm not going to pretend I had some kind of relationship with him that I didn't have. I didn't. I was a fan just like anybody else, where I got an opportunity to sit there during the time that he was doing the sketch and have this really nice, intimate, small conversation with him like everyone else does who is in that moment. But what really struck me is just how kind he was. It was just this really pleasant, kind conversation, and he was just there. I thought it was so cool that he was there doing this for a charity that was important to him, and that was what was driving the man. But his artwork is stellar. I'm very sorry that he's going through this terrible battle, just because I've seen it with both of my parents, and I know that cancer battles are very unique. Having seen it with both of my parents, who had two very different kinds of cancer, cancer is a just terrible disease. It's amazing with how far we've come in our understanding of how to treat cancer and how much research has gone into it, that there's still so much more to be done to do something to help people who get hit with this terrible disease. I was very sorry to hear that George Perez has cancer. It's somebody who obviously is really important to so much of the comic book community, and just it was a sad week to see that. But I thought his message, his letter, I do urge you to read it. If you have not, please seek out his letter and hear his words, because he finds this way in his letter to make it this positive, uplifting experience towards his fans. And I just was left afterwards going, wow, this is a guy who, it's everything we always dream of, right? That we have this relationship with our creators, that the creators care about their fans and all of that. And he did this really cool outreach that I think was really just reminiscent of what I think of in classic comics, of what our relationship is with the creator. I go back to Stan's Soapbox and all of those things that we grew up with as a kid, that you would read, and you felt like, I remember Stan Lee on Saturday morning cartoons, right, where he was the narrator, and you felt like Dan was part of your family. And you think that way of comic creators, whether you've had the opportunity to meet them or not. They're behind the scenes. They're this person that has been taking you through these magic worlds. George Perez, through his letter, I think, really captured that kind of feeling. And I just thought it says a lot about somebody when they take the time to do that, because there's zero reason that he should feel the need to do that. He's certainly given us plenty over the years as fans. But I thought that letter was like this really moving thing that he did for us. That was neat. I don't know, it was a good letter.
Yeah. I'll tell you, man, it's one of those things with him, and you see the outpouring of people with the stories about how much nice and just wonderful person he was. And it's funny, when everyone talks about him, they say he was this great artist, but he's also this wonderful person. And for me, with the legacy he leaves behind is not just great artwork. It is just this wonderful human being who went out of his way to be nice to everybody. And I think that is a stellar example of him and who he is and what he's about. And, you just hop online and you'll start reading all these stories just from various people, just like how you said you had a nice little conversation with him at a signing. There's so many different people who've had these different type of one-off, meeting with him. And while you're talking to him, he was just a big kid. He was just a fan like us. He's one of us. And that was a common sentiment that I was getting from seeing all just the George Perez stories and just the interactions and just the dealings with him. So this man, he's touched lives and not just artwork. He as a person has had these impacts on people, and it's a tough one. And a heart goes out to anybody who is his personal friend, who knows him, who's spent time with him and his family, just all the wonderful people out there who truly love this man. My heart goes out to you. I can't imagine really what you're going through, in this process. And, it's thoughts and prayers are going out to everybody. This is a tough one, but it's funny, as you said, he was still positive about it. It wasn't, this is the end, goodbye. It was still it was still him. And I think it's just a wonderful, I agree with you. It's a letter everyone should read.
It was funny, you referenced the stories that people have out there of meeting him and what that was like. And you're right, that's really consistent, that's what that experience is. I mentioned before that I'm not trying to pretend that I had a personal relationship with him. And it's true. But yet in that moment, and I think that says a lot about a person when they make you feel like in that moment that you do have a relationship with them. And and that's the consistency of the stories that you're mentioning that are out there, the fact that this man did that. Because at the end of the day, as comic fans, the reality is these creators, writers, artists, colorists, all the way through the entire board, everybody who is responsible for putting together the comic books that we read, where our relationship really is with them is in their work and what they've delivered to us. The fact that we are in an era where conventions have been so prevalent. I know during COVID times that's not so much a thing, but they have been such a big part of what we all do, these conventions, and the opportunity to meet creators and have those personal experiences. It's not the same, obviously, in every experience that you walk away with this feeling like, I just had a moment with this person. I've met creators that I adore who, this is no insult to them. They're not George Perez. George Perez is, you mentioned it, he's got kind of like, and I say this in a way that I hope that I'm able to hold on to. He has this childlike wonder about him when you meet him that is something that you hope you never lose. And I think it's sort of the way that you live life and approach life and things like that. And there's something to be learned about that. So when you talk about somebody, and it's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about him today, because of the fact that I think you're right. I think you nailed that, where there is that just sense of excitement in things. And I think too often nowadays we get bogged down. It's very easy to get bogged down in the amount of negative that's out there. And I'm not talking about in comics, I'm just talking about in our culture in general right now. There seems to be just a lot of negativity. And I think it's really important to latch onto the people that bring that positive sense of wonder to what the world is. Because we're very lucky. And as you're living life, we're all lucky to be living. And we really should hold on to that sense of wonder because there's so much to have wonder about. And it's people like George that remind us of that. Not only in their work, but in the personal encounter with them. You actually get why their work has such an impact on you when you meet them. George, it's not a shock to me after you meet the guy. Well, of course I'm going to love his work. Because I just look at what he delivers when you're meeting him. I'm very, very glad and very, very lucky that in my life I've had the opportunity to have so much of it surrounded by his work. And he's one of many comic book giants who I count myself lucky, have been with me since, 1980. I first read that JLA, JSA crossover. I was 9. 51 now, or I'm going to be 51 in a matter of weeks. It's one of those things where you look back at how much this 40 years this guy's work has touched my life, and he continues to do so today. So I'm with you as far as my thoughts and prayers are out there to his family, his friends, people who really have known him intimately from that extent. I hope he's able to do this personal appearance that he was referencing in his letter. I don't know. I certainly would love to go to it.
I know.
Because nowadays it's, I think, tougher to find conventions, but it was so cool in letter. He's like, I'm going to do a personal appearance. If I'm able to do it, I want to hug you. And those kind of things. I thought that was so cool that he's like, I want it to be a moment if we do that. So I hope for his sake he's able to do that. My father in his last year when he was fighting his cancer battle, he went to Disney with the grandkids. He went to a wedding. He had been an educator who had been a professional speaker. And it was an anniversary year of multiple times that he spoke in Arizona. And he, because of his health, both my brother and I were unsure. And I remember having the conversation where he was like, I really want to do this. He's like, I feel good. I really want to do this. Plus his brother lived in Arizona. So he really wanted to make that a thing. So I said, well, let's do it. And we sat down together, and his enthusiasm when he was doing his presentation, like rewriting it to make it more modern, if that makes sense, make it more current and contemporary for the audience that was going to be there, was so high. And it was funny how, when I was thinking about George's letter and what he was trying to do, how it kind of connected with my father, I think we've all been lucky enough in our life, hopefully, that we see people that know their time is coming, and they have a chance to do some of the things that they want to do or say some of the things that they want to say. And that kind of thing's a gift. And I don't know, his letter really moved me this week. To a certain extent, really what I'm really doing is thanking him too, because, he's going through this major battle and did not have to do that. And I firmly believe that. He didn't have to send a letter out to the fans. He's done enough for us in his career. You know what I mean? We've got a legacy of just amazing work that he's touched us with, and how many conventions he's gone to and fan experience and signings and things to connect with his fans. He didn't have to do that letter, but he did. It was important to him. And I thought it was just really cool. So, I don't know, just kind of thought it was really important we opened the show with this.
To the Batmobile. Let's go.
Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
You're ready to move up.
Our first discussion this episode is going to be of Batman Fear State Omega. James Tynion IV is the writer. It's Tynion. I know I butcher his last name, so I really want to apologize because I'm a big fan of his writing. Riccardo Federici, Christian Doucet, Ryan Benjamin, Guillem March, Trevor Hairsline on art, Chris Sotomayor on colors, Clayton Cowles on letters, Jamal Campbell on the cover, Simone Bianchi on the variant cover, Jorge Jimenez on the variant cover, Ben Abernathy is the editor. Batman created by Bob Kane with Bill Finger. And apologies for any name butchery, because this is a creative team who's really doing what I really wanted from this issue in general. And it's going to kind of frame up our discussion here. It closed up this chapter of Batman storytelling, Fear State, and in a way that I was so happy that the story went. Because I loved the whole idea of Future State, and obviously there's still elements of Future State that's still ongoing in the DC Universe, but what I hoped was Future State was this changeable thing. It was something that you want to happen, because I wanted to see the storytelling, like anything where, you get timey-wimey, right? Is there that opportunity for the story to go a different direction, for it to end a different way, to end in hope? I'm actually looking at the last page right now where you see the Batman driving away in the Batmobile. And I got to admit that is a kick-butt Batmobile. So again, kudos to the art team. And there's various art teams, depending on the pages that we're talking about here. But before we really dive into talking about this issue, let's just talk about Fear State in general. I found this to be a very, very satisfying story. It was one that really was pulling at the emotions because I was very worried about what was going to happen out of this. That sense of danger is something that I think nowadays we shouldn't take for granted. the sense that they're able to create a real feeling of, can somebody die here? Can the status quo in Gotham change significantly? What does this mean for the future of Batman and for those that are associated with him? And this story delivered all of that, where every issue I was worried. It added to this sense of drama. It was a page-turner all the way through. And I'm not just talking about the main story itself. Catwoman, Harlequin, Nightwing, Batman Urban Legends, the book I Am Batman. The books that tied into this all added to that same sense of drama. I loved every bit of this story.
This was an epic event, and I absolutely loved it. And again, it was the future state. Was the nice teaser as to how horrific things could go. And then in the Fear State story, we actually get, and again, it's funny, with any good Gotham stories, you got to put air quotes around the word win. Because, severe body count, severe damage, just crippling to the city itself and its people. And it's one of those things where you're just like, man, and they're considering this a win even. Just the amount of tragic horror and fear that still is gripping the city after this is something I absolutely just love how they played this out. And all the titles you talked about had just those great, I loved the Poison Ivy Harley Quinn story that was told throughout this. And even, that ends in, in Omega here. And I'm like, I want more of this story. I want to see more of Poison Ivy, because she's another character that really, they upped her A game on it. They really beefed her up. And same thing with the Scarecrow. In this issue, a couple of the police are talking, is he really a big bad? He is after this one. And this was just the first round for Scarecrow. He's not done yet. This isn't over. And he's just seen that, yes, I could do this. So it's going to motivate him more to fix the problems he made last time. So, you're going to get more really cool, Scarecrow stories out of this. And, this was a great story that's going to have future ramifications for generations to come in Gotham. You're going to get people who were born out of, we're seeing people who are born out of this, with, Clown Killer, and even Ghostmakers got bumped up on this one, and the new Poison Ivy, they really did something epic here where they made this massive story that, has future ramifications. And this right here was just a fabulous ending because, again, as I said, it's air quotes around the win. And you can see that in the heroes, like with Montoya, just how, she won as commissioner, but did she? How much of a win is this? And it's absolutely wonderful, man. I love this.
Sometimes the win is surviving, though. And I think that was the cool part about this story. The fact that they survived this. And we'll have to talk about this more in the next portion where we talk about the new Batman story, the new Batman issue. But I think survival sometimes is the victory, the fact that you're able to get through all this. You're mentioning other people. Who I really grew to like in this? Miracle Molly and the Unsanity Collective. Where in the beginning, I didn't dislike them, but I didn't think much of them. I thought this is going to be this cool little storytelling group that are part of this story, but they're going to be... I actually felt like they were more kind of a throwaway, if it makes any sense. And as the story developed further and we got one-shots devoted to them, you started to see that out. And that was something I thought that was really well done in this as well. The one-shots. The secret files that were associated with this, I thought were really well produced and added to the story and added to my understanding of the motivations of the characters. And that was important because sometimes when you do an event, you handle how you handle the tie-ins is pretty critical. The narrative that they put in some of these one-shots could not be in the main story because the Batman issues cooked. And that's what I mean by that is it really allowed the other books to tell these side stories and expanded stories that fleshed certain elements of Batman out in a way that was really satisfying without ruining the pace of the main story that was going on in the Batman issues. I love that there's this idea of these events now where it doesn't have to be issue 1 takes place in Batman, issue 2 takes place in Nightwing, issue 3 takes place in Catwoman. It sounds like I'm making fun of that approach. I'm not. those stories work really well when that's what's best for the story. And I love those when that's the way that the story is meant to unfold. And those creative teams are working together with a common story element, and they're able to gel all that together. So I'm not knocking that. But I don't think you always have to do that. In this case, really the main narrative was happening in Batman. And the stuff that was going on in Detective even was this really cool story about him and the mayor having this there was, a larger piece that was going on with these eggs and the danger that was going on there, that I really loved what was going on in Detective Comics, and that it didn't have to be the main narrative. It was a side story that was reflective of something else that was happening during Fear State. And that led to a really tight story that was happening in Detective Comics. Again, Batman title, the other main Batman title, yet it's delivering an equally satisfying story that you could read completely independently of this and just know that Fear State's going on. Or if you're reading the whole experience, have this larger sense of the actual scale of what was going on during this event. Was very, very satisfying.
And I'll tell you, one of the things I loved about this was the whole Nightwing, Barbara Gordon, Batgirl story that played out, and the Batgirls and all that was playing out in Nightwing. They did a great job telling that portion of the story there. And then when you read the Batman title, you have the tidbits of information that you need to further the Bat story in the Bat title. With the little notes, they did have the editor notes say, see, Nightwing issue, blah, 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 and all that. And it was a really great, again, I like having it, where they go from one issue to another. And I enjoy those kind of where it's numbered and things like that. I like order. But this also story, the way they told the story, I focus just on the Batman title. I get the Fear State story, and then I can go into the other titles and I get the full version of that story. So if I want the full Nightwing, Barbara Gordon, Batgirl, Seer story, I read it in Nightwing. If I want the Mayor and Batman story, I go in Detective. Mm-hmm. If I want more on the Harley and Ivy story, I go into Harley's title. There's all these different titles that I can go into to get, now I know the rest of the story, if I want to get the full details. So this was, again, I loved how they laid this out. I loved how the final story was told. This is one of those, as I said, beginning, this is an epic event that, was absolutely just a delightful story for me to read. And it was so horrific, in the body count, the damage, the destruction, that, again, Gotham was a main character in this story. In all the best Batman stories, Gotham City itself is a character. And this 100% was that. And they really flexed out the muscle to let other people be a crucial part of the story. And again, it's a Batman title, but Batman was, he's the crux of the story. He's the main focal, but it wasn't a lone Batman. He needed his team to do this. He needed new people that he didn't really trust, didn't have reason to trust before, but still had to trust them. They still had to play an integral part in it. All the stuff that happened in the Catwoman story with the villains, kind of the villains uniting, and all that played out. And it was they had multiple stories that were getting tied into this one brilliant, epic event. And that was, I absolutely love this thing. This is, something I'm going to, get, when it comes out in Absolutes. And I don't know if they're going to do a giant mega Fear State Absolute where it's got all the titles, or if they're just going to do Batman Fear State, Nightwing Fear, and if they'll do like a separate Fear State. I don't know how they're doing it, but however they do it, I will have those Absolutes on my shelf. I guarantee it.
I don't think it'll be Absolutes. I think it'll be omnibuses.
Omnibus? Oh, yeah.
Because I don't think it's a story that lends... I mean, don't get me wrong. I would love to read it as an absolute. But I think it's going to be one of those where it seems to be stories like this that are larger. They capture in either one or a couple omnibuses, where they have the main story and then they have the companion piece. So it'll be interesting to see how they do collect this. I'll be surprised if this one goes absolute, not because, and that's not any knock on the art quality. It's more of the fact that it is, I think, such a larger story. What's interesting, you mentioned the Ivy story, and when we talk about coordination, there's the coordination of all of these other titles to what's going on in the main Batman title. But then there was even between Harley's book and Catwoman's book a coordination of the Ivy story, because both Harley and Catwoman's book had their own individual narrative threads going on, but there was a connected narrative between the two of them because they were dealing with different elements of Poison Ivy at various time in those stories. While you're right, Catwoman had this whole villains battle going on during the whole thing, and with a swerve that you saw coming, but was so satisfying in how it all played out. And that was one of the great things about this story, when you tie everything up in a nice, neat bow. Nightwing had this incredibly satisfying ending with what's going on now with Nightwing and his relationship with Barbara Gordon. And it's, I geek out at this stuff. It's what I want to see. The one relationship I think I wanted to see out of this whole thing when you talk about Catwoman is I wanted to see some forward movement on the cat in the bat. Yeah, I know. And I'm not disappointed that we didn't. They're building an anticipation of that. I hope that doesn't get dropped, though. Because it's something it's a relationship that's really important to me. But I felt like what they did with Nightwing and Barbara, it was such the right time for it, and it so fits what Tom Taylor's doing over in that book, and so fits this launching of the Batgirls book that's coming out this coming week. I am so excited right now. And I love that, we're going to December. That's been my experience. We've had this restructuring at DC, and that's always scary because people are losing jobs, and you see certain people. I mean, we don't know everybody that lost their jobs and had to, rework and find their way elsewhere. Behind the scenes that we aren't even aware help put these together, editor-wise and things like that, and production staff-wise. They're not people that are typically in the face of fans where we are aware of who they all are. So my heart always goes out to them when I hear about that. But then you hear about multiple creators who are no longer under exclusive contract, or they're not being contracted, and you see that stuff play out, and that always makes me sad because I want them to continue, because I'm a fan. I want them to continue producing work. Whether it's for DC winds up being irrelevant to me, except in the sense that I want them to be able to be properly compensated for the quality of their work. That's where I get scared when you see stuff like that. After all that, shakes out, and you start taking a look at the company of DC and reorganization and restructuring, you hope it lands on its feet through that restructuring, starts making money. Because in the end, if the company starts making money and starts doing well, and we, at some point in time get some comic resurgence where, there's this new kind of wave of interest in comics, that there's going to be some opportunity, more opportunity, greater opportunity, right? Because that's where expansion comes from. That's where offering more titles comes from, and things like that. So I always hope when they make those moves that they aren't moves that fizzle, and don't go anywhere. I got to say, I've been really happy with the product that we've been getting out of this. And I'm hopeful that, I like to see that for not just DC. I like to see that for Marvel. I like to see that for Image, Dark Horse, all the companies. I want to see them doing well. Even if I'm not able to read everything that they're producing, I'm always a fan of seeing comic books do well. DC has really been doing a great job on the comics that they've been producing. I've been very, very happy. This was one where if it had ended differently, if it had ended darker, I would not be feeling very happy right now, because I really needed this after reading Future State to end this way. I would have never told you this is how I wanted to see it wrap up, because I think you got to let the story play out and breathe and see the way that the writer intended, and all the writers, I should say, but obviously the main writer of Batman intended for us to be taken through this storytelling. But this was an emotional story, I think, driven a lot more by what we read in Future State. Because Future State was really dark, really grim. And that was an interesting thing. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, and it's funny how you're saying, this has such a positive, upbeat ending. It doesn't really, but by comparison, it does. And I think that's something that's wonderful. Or this is positive and upbeat for Gotham. Yeah. That's why this story ending was so perfect. because we do get a happy ending. We do get a good ending out of this, but it's still not like sunshiny and lollipops, because you can't have that kind of story with Gotham. You can't have that kind of story with what they were dealing with, and again, it sets up so much more coming down the pipeline. I love this moment when they're driving, when the police are driving, Scarecrow to Arkham. And the one guard's talking about how his grandmother nailed herself into the bathroom during the fear state and attacked the dad with a hammer when they tried to get her out. He's like, there's so much fear in this city thanks to him. And Crane replies back, no, the fear was always there. I was just trying to do something productive with it. Next time, I'll do a better job. I love that line right there. I'm like, yes. Because, I don't know who's going to create it, but there's going to be another awesome Scarecrow story.
Sure.
And it's going to be him again. We're seeing this flexing of the Scarecrow, of how powerful he can be without any form of superpowers. And think about it. A lot of the fear he pumped into this wasn't using the toxins. It was just him being the master of fear. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so looking forward to the next creator who says it's time to do the next story. And they're not going to call it Fear State Part 2 because it'll be something different, but this is the kind of stuff that really I was loving when I was reading this, how they're setting up and they're laying they're laying the groundwork here for the next story. So not only are we getting this fantastic ending, but the groundwork is laid for another Scarecrow story. The groundwork is laid for Miracle Molly and the Unsanity continuing coming back. There's all the different pieces out there, like they're coming back. We're going to get another one. Peacekeeper 1. I'm so looking forward to his next story that we get out of this, man. There is so much we can do on this. This is just absolutely wonderful. One of the other things I thought was absolutely brilliant in this was the conversation between Batman and Scarecrow while he's taking him to the new Arkham. And again, it was one of those really neat moments because, again, it's showing Scarecrow's intelligence, showing Batman's intelligence as well. A lesser man would have just shut up and not said anything or tried to keep him quiet. No. Bat's, just equally as intelligent as Scarecrow is. They both understand the nature of fear and psychology and whatnot. And it was kind of a neat conversation back and forth. And Bruce really was completely honest with him. And that's something I thought was neat because Bruce knows him so well that if he tried to lie, Scarecrow would know it. And Scarecrow would get a win. And even a couple times when he's like, you're evading, Bruce really didn't evade. He was just and he got to the information, he got to the questions, and he talked about, just laid everything out. And I loved how that was after, Scarecrow's got, I've got these hidden sleeper cells. No, Bat already knew about them. Not only did he know about the ones that were attacking the caravan, but the 12 more. And I love how Bruce lays it out saying, hey, I've got all your people, letting him know I've got everybody. And I thought that was a really cool just statement on his fact. And then even I cheered. I absolutely cheered out loud with Simon Saint when I saw he's being turned over to the United States military and you see the wall sitting there. And I'm like, oh, yeah, this poor guy is in trouble now.
Peacekeeper 1 was an interesting one, too, spinning out of that it's a character created for this who obviously had gone through a number of changes due to various manipulations throughout this, and he's out there, as another character to be played with. Punchline, is a character that in this run came out that is out there. There's been a lot of toys that have been put out into the world that can be used again, and that's always interesting. When we look back at classic Batman runs, right? They, Clown Hunter, Ghostmaker, all these characters that have been put together during this run and during this particular storyline in general are characters that have been evolved, changed, and are now a part of the mythos. They're toys in the sandbox to play with. And that's nice because, to your point about somebody else having a Scarecrow story in the future and things like that, I think those work when you now take those things, you shelve them until that writer comes around, or use them, as shorter stories and things like that, until you're ready for the next epic. having more toys in the sandbox, they aren't just toys that can be used in the Batman universe. They can be used throughout the DC universe. And that's going to be interesting to see where these characters appear next and what that looks like and what creators decide to take advantage of them being there. That was a victory of this. I think they put a lot more on the table that was not there before. One of the pieces that we didn't really talk about in this is Jace. And it was interesting. I loved Jace's participation in this story. I also like that Jace is not instantly part of Team Batman out of this. There hasn't been that moment. Just that Jace is operating. Jace had to deal with Fear State just like everybody else. And because of the nature of the story, there wasn't that encounter between the two of them. And I liked that we didn't go to that, if that makes any sense, because that's kind of always how it goes, that we do this encounter and it has to happen. But the storytelling naturally didn't lend itself to that, so it wasn't forced into the story, and it leaves us kind of in a limbo, not a limbo, in a introductory state to Jace in Gotham that I like, actually. I like going on Jace's journey. Same way I liked it with like Miles Morales and stuff like that when that character was created. Like, where give it a chance to breathe. Let's see who Jace is. Because I feel like I'm still learning about, like, I'm enjoying everything I'm reading with Jace. I want to read more with him. To a certain extent, my hope in the future for Jace is, and this is going to sound strange, and I almost hope that Jace isn't the Batman of Gotham at some point. I hope he's Batman. Because I actually quite like him as his version of Batman, but I hope there's maybe a vehicle for Jace. Not that I hate him being part of Gotham, and nor if they continue making him a Batman of Gotham that I'm going to dislike it. I love the book. What I mean is I don't want there to be this need for... If there's a storytelling way that organically Jace and Bruce will work together in Gotham, that whole thing will work. I'm completely cool with it. But I also think there's room with Batman universe to maybe plop Jace into another town and really give that character a chance to develop as a Batman with his own storytelling, his own city, his own way of operating. It is kind of what's being set up for him right now in his operating in Gotham. It is what I love about his book, and I think what's happening is I'm becoming protective of it. And that's the reason why I'm hoping there's some kind of evolution to where he has his own city. We can keep going with that. I don't need him. I don't know if I necessarily am looking to him to become an agent of Bruce, if that makes any sense. It's an interesting sort of book. Like, I love his book. So I'm trying to figure out where I would like Jace to fit in. And that's been the interesting part as I've been reading his storytelling is I find that I love the character. I think what was interesting when they introduced the concept of I Am Batman, I thought it was going to be Luke Fox. I didn't know they were going to introduce his brother. So I thought this was going to be Batwing evolving into being Batman, and I was intrigued by that, and I'm like, okay, they've already got a working relationship. I can see how this would work out moving forward. Maybe he'll go back to being Batwing, or maybe, somehow he'll still be Batman, but he'll be working with Bruce, and there's already that relationship. It's fine. As the Jace story has gone on, and we've seen him in an initial miniseries, and we've gotten to see him in, Future State, we got to see him in his own book and how it incorporated into the Fear State story. I found that one of the things that I like about Jace has been the fact that even though it was a part of this narrative, it's its own narrative, and I really like its own narrative. I don't know where I want to see Jace go after this. I know I want to see it, and I'm open-minded to protecting this idea of Jace's narrative being its own thing.
I know, man. He's an interesting, cool character going on. And like you, I 100% still want him around.
Yes.
And I like him under the moniker of Batman, not giving him a different code name.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. For me, it was weird. Part of me thinks I would like to see him be the Batman of Gotham for a while and have Bruce travel about and have Bruce be the world traveler. Part of me would like that, but I really do love Bruce in Gotham because that is his city. That is his heart. That is his soul. So I never want to lose that. But I think for a while there, I think it would be kind of neat to have Jace be the Batman of Gotham and have him be the sole bat that responds to the craziness that happens in Gotham City. And I would even throw him on the Bat title and have Bruce on the Detective title, and do it that route. But again, it's as we're going to talk about the next Batman issue. Batman's on that, and it's an awesome story. So I'm going to throw that notion out and because I want to keep going with the story that we're about to get in the Batman title. But I don't know where they're going to put him, what they're going to do, but he cannot go away. That's 100% a solid thing there. There's still a lot of loose ends within the Fox family. You think about what Lucius Fox kind of did. In a way, he stole Wayne Fortune. And there's is he taking the money and using it for the right? Is he using it for himself? What's going on within the Fox family? And that's a story I would like to see them handle, because that would be a really cool faction of with him dealing with his family, and is his family the villains? Are they not the villains? What's going on there? Could that be the coming together of Bruce and Jace in the dealing with the Fox family? I don't know what they've got future planned for him, but all I know is I want to read it. I want to see more of this guy, because he is someone that they did a great job laying down the groundwork, laying down a foundation where I am 100% comfortable calling him Batman. Not the new Batman, not temporary Batman. He is Batman. And I think that's something that, they've put, the cape and cowl on other people. And you've always known it was temporary. With Jace, it has more of a permanence feel to it. It feels like he could continue the run as Batman. And he and Bruce could work in tandem as two people with the moniker of Batman. We've got two Flashes, we can have two Batmans. And I think it would work. And just like if Clark ever comes back to the world, we'll have two Supermen. So I'm okay with two Batman right now. And I don't know. It's another wonderful character that they did a great job creating and getting me invested in him. And I think that's the key is, you want to tell us a cool story, but get me emotionally invested in him. It's funny because I'm like, I want this. No, I want that. I want this. I don't know what exactly I want. All I know is I want more. Feed me more. Yeah,
I guess what I really don't want out of it, and it's probably where my concern is coming from, is it's exactly how you laid it out. We're reading this, and we're going to talk about in the next segment, we're going to talk about the new Batman run, now that we've got Joshua Williamson taking over, and how much I love that. So we're going to talk about that. It's not so much as I want all of it, so I don't want I Am Batman to go away, and I think that's what I'm protective of. I don't want this Jace thing to be some run where it fizzles because of the fact that there's no organic way to give Jace his own breathing room. And I use the Miles Morales example for a reason, because the way that worked in Ultimate Spider-Man was, in Ultimate Spider-Man, Peter Parker was dead, and Miles Morales took over. That was in the Ultimate run. It gave Miles Morales the chance to be Spider-Man and just go on from there. I want that for Jace without giving up Bruce. And that's why I'm hopeful, and none of this is me kind of like saying, well, if they don't go this route, I'm going to hate it. I'm intrigued by Jace's story. I'm protective of it. I want to see where it goes. I am also incredibly protective of Bruce. But I think the most sincere compliment I can give John Ridley and the creative team that's working on I Am Batman, I am becoming just as protective of Jace in its own way. And I want that to continue to breathe as its own thing. I'm fine with it interacting with Bruce's world in a way that's organic and makes sense. And however, if they have a plan for that, which I'm sure they do, I'd like to see what that is. I just want it to go somewhere because and it is. The book is one in a very short period of time. I mean, because we're only a few issues into I Am Batman. That's a title that's become a must-read when it comes out. I'm like, oh, another issue. Yeah, cool. I want to read more of this. And which is also the most sincere compliment I can give that book. I'm typically the guy that's going to say, I want it to be Bruce. It's got to be Bruce.
Yeah, I know. And I'm agreeing with you. I love Bruce as Bat. But it was just, I don't know. It's one of those weird things. If they were to tell me that Jace was taking over the cowl and being Batman, I would be okay with it. I would miss Bruce. I would miss Bruce, just like I miss Clark as Superman, but I'm cool with John. I like John as Superman. So it's one of those weird things where I am in a no-lose situation here. If they keep giving me Bruce, I'm happy. If they say, no, we're going to go with Jace, I'm happy. So I am absolutely in a wonderful spot right here. Now, my ideal is both.
Well, and see, my ideal is both, because I would not be happy if Jace took over for Bruce and we went that route. Now, I mean, here's the thing. I would be just as unhappy if Jace fizzles. You know what I mean? So I'm not saying that, like, Jace is expendable for me. I love Jace. I love the character, and I want it. So I guess that's where, in my head, I'm trying to wrap around, what are they going to do? Yeah. And that's an interesting part of this. And I guess the reason why is I've seen people replace Bruce so many times already. We've done that. I don't want that again. I want something different. And I don't want Jace to become Azrael. I mean, I'm not saying they would give him the Azrael moniker. What I mean is, we did Nightfall and Night's Quest and Night's End. We had Bruce replaced by Asbats. And we got to see that story play out to the point where at the end, we wanted Bruce to retake the mantle. I don't need that. I don't want somebody to take Bruce's mantle and then eventually Bruce to come back and retake that mantle. What I want is Bruce to maintain his mantle, Jace to develop his own, and he's doing that. I think when Jace, like in one of the issues, Jace recently says, "I am Batman," and I know it's a nod to the book, but it's also a nod to the fact that he is developing his own identity as Batman. It's funny, the more that book goes on, I'm with you. I want him to be Batman. Not Bruce's Batman. I want him to be his own Batman, and I want that to develop. So it's where I think my Miles Morales example in the Ultimate Universe, when that was created, is a lot more relevant to me. Which, yes, that was a replacement for Peter Parker, but we still had like the main universe where Peter Parker was operating, and Spider-Man stories were going on. Jace, in this case, I actually love the fact that they're both in the same universe, that there is the opportunity for them to interact, but I want Jace to be able to grow and thrive. If it's in Gotham, great. I think there's a great opportunity, though, to let that character develop somewhere else, too. But it could be the same way like Nightwing's. Nightwing's technically still in Suburb, in Bloodhaven. Catwoman is, too. Gotham's huge.
Yes.
What do you think about that? It's like we act like Nightwing and Catwoman, because they're in these places, are on a different planet. And they really aren't. Like, Bruce and Catwoman... here's the funny part of this story. Bruce and Catwoman are taking a year off for each other. Where did they go? A few blocks away?
A few blocks away from each other. Just taking time apart, yeah.
We're acting like she's on another planet.
Yeah. But Bloodhaven's a completely different city.
Right.
A different part. It's not part of Gotham. It's not a suburb of Gotham. It's kind of like New York City. I compare it to New York City and Baltimore. That kind of distance. Where it's a couple-hour drive.
That's not... It's Bloodhaven's part of Gotham. I mean, it's the way Euclid... It's more like the way Euclid is to Cleveland.
Really? I never took it as that. I took it as completely separate cities, even separate states.
No, Bloodhaven's a city in Gotham that's depicted as being geographically close to Gotham City. Same thing with where Catwoman's at.
Well, Catwoman, yeah. Catwoman's just a neighborhood.
Bloodhaven's not on a different... Bloodhaven's close to Gotham.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I never saw it as that. I always thought it was...
it's like how we grew up Euclid to Cleveland.
Right. No, I get that. But I never saw it as that, to be honest with you.
Oh, it's always been introduced as that. I'm going back to the original Nightwing stories. Yeah, Bloodhaven... Now, it's Euclid to Cleveland. I mean, now think about that. Think about how big Cleveland is. If you're on the west, like where you're at.
Right.
Your journey to Euclid is a journey. I mean, it's not, you're not walking there. You're not riding your bike there.
Right. No, I get it. Yeah. It's, and that's the thing with like, as we're laughing with Bruce and Catwoman, it's like, the five boroughs kind of thing going on with New York City.
Right. Well, you know what it is? Let's go this way. It's like you coming over to my house.
Yeah, exactly.
These are suburbs, but what it means to be a suburb to the like Gotham is Cleveland. Bloodhaven is maybe much more equivalent to you coming out to my place, which is a journey. You have to. That's not something where you go, I'm going to plop over to Shawn's for 5 minutes. It's not. You're planning a 45-minute drive.
Yeah.
But still, I think it's where I laugh at the Catwoman story right now, and I love it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking it, but I'm like, It's funny that they took a year off for each other and they're about 45 minutes away from each other. In a drive, which is pretty much he's in the Batmobile like or the Batwing like all the time, right?
Yes, and even within Fear State, they had a little bit of interaction when they needed to see each other. But they still have that year off. So when that year is up, that's going to be the story where we see what happens between the Bat and the Cat,
right?
Because the year still hasn't expired yet. Once the year has technically expired, that's where we'll see the Bat and the Cat together again. I 100% think we're going to see that. They're too much in connection with each other to end that story.
Yeah, it's funny. Where there's a reality to some of this to a certain extent, though. So I'm saying everything I just said. How many people do we both know that live in that same geographic area that we're talking about? I'm talking about in our world that we haven't seen in years. Because
of that, exactly.
So, I mean, there's a reality to that as well. Like, it's not even that you don't want to be seen. We don't pass it's shocking sometimes when you run into people because of the fact that you don't see each other. So, yeah, it's easy enough. I mean, if you're making the conscious decision to not see each other, you can do it in that geographic location, which Bruce and Catwoman have. Yet, we saw how easy it was for Bruce to be there for her when he needed to be. Which we did see that as well. So it's interesting. Let's talk a little Batman, because we're already heading there. So let's continue this discussion and take a look at the new run of Batman.
Can Batman escape? One hint, the worst is yet to come.
Our next discussion is going to be Batman 118. The Abyss Part 1, Now It's a Party. Joshua Williamson is the writer. Jorge Molina and Mikel Janin are the artists. Tomio Mori on colors, Clayton Cowles on letters, Jorge Molina on the cover, Francesco Mattina, Jock, and Victor Bogdanovic on the variant covers, Dave Wheelgo's associate editor, Ben Abernathy editor, Batman created by Bob Kane with Bill Finger, Superman created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, by special arrangement with the Jerry Siegel family. This was a story I was so looking forward to, just because you build anticipation. Like, we've had great writers after great writers writing Batman who've made a mark. They've told stories that have moved forward Batman and made major impact on where the character's at. I was ready after Future State and Fear State for a new era. And I would have been happy with a new and enjoyed a new era with the current writer, being able to start a new arc. Because that's what happens, right? When you've got a creator on there, they tell their big story and then they head into a new big story. Well, now we got this new chapter. This new chapter harkens back to Batman Inc. But it harkens back to Batman Inc. and this is the best thing about continuity, right? All that Batman Incorporated stuff happened before. Now we're at an era of what's happened during this time where Bruce doesn't have the kind of finances that he had before. The Batman Incorporated is no longer being funded. Batman's been very, very busy with a lot of other things, as we well know, during that time. What has happened during that time? And what happens when those people have not only been accused of murder, but Batman's verifying it was them. I mean, what a story that we kick off with in this run. Not where I expected this to go. This is a writer who I have grown to love because of the epic Flash run, and just Joshua Williamson's become a writer. We talk about creators that we start following. Joshua Williamson is somebody who I just trust that when I heard that it was going to, because that's what I'm worried about. We got our current writer who I'm really enjoying that's leaving Batman. Where does it go from here? You're putting Joshua Williamson on this book? All right. I mean, my gosh, epic Flash runs. I hope this becomes an epic Batman run, similar to what I loved about that Flash run, because he's somebody who's able to do big deliveries in arcs while doing a slow build to larger stories that each of these arcs build towards. And these are my favorite runs when you do that. That's what I loved about the Flash. So I'm hoping we're getting this from Batman, because that's something I would love to see him do here. I don't want the same kind of stories we would get in The Flash, but I want to see this be that level of epic run.
Oh, big time. Big time. And it was funny because when they announced James Tynion was leaving, we were like, what? No, whoa. And then they announce Williamson's taking over. Like, okay, yeah, he's good. He's good. We're getting somebody who's good. So what's going to happen? And it was one of those things like, and I'm laughing to myself saying, I would not want to be the person following the Tynion run. And, and it's, again, we've got a name. We've got somebody we know and trust who does some wonderful stories, is a brilliant storyteller. So it's like, okay, Mike's been dropped. Yeah, I'm going to pick it up and go with it. And I love how he immediately went into it. It's continuing on what just happened. Gotham City is partying it up because they survived. And again, it's one of those neat things about Gotham being Gotham. They're laughing, they're partying, they're like, yay, we almost died again. Instead of going, I am moving out of this city, they're like, nah, we survived, let's live it up. And that's, again, the strength of this city. Gotham City is a character and must be a character. And right here in the opening pages, we're seeing that it's a character. And I even loved how, like, with these no-name villains breaking into the pawn shop to get a little bit of money so they can then really party it up, because nothing good happens in Gotham before midnight. So they're going to just do a little bit of B&E, get their money, and then get ready for the real party. And I love just that little notion. And as you're reading this, I can completely see that. And it's, right from jump, we're getting Gotham City. Right from jump, we're getting the Bat. And I love how he uses the fact that we only have one image of Batman within the first couple pages, but it's still just as powerful. It's still just as meaningful.
Yeah, the artwork on this is really stunning, because you actually, the thing I really love about this is you get to see different Batman costumes in this, which I think you see like this evolution of, you see it in the initial Batman outfit that he's currently operating in Gotham. You get to see some of the past Batman costumes, but then you also get to see him kind of go back to this Batman Incorporated costume again as he starts to be the jet-setting Batman. And I really loved seeing the artistic take on the different Batman costumes. This art team is really great for this book. If this is what we're getting moving forward out of the Batman title, I'm really, really happy with where this book's going, because it's a very beautiful book.
100% amen. And I gotta just tell you, when I'm talking about how much I love this book, yes, I'm loving the story, but I'm also loving this art combination. This, again, it's one of those neat things when you've got a brilliant story being told that complements, the artwork, and the remainder of the creator team really complements what we're getting. And it's a nice blend of your traditional big splash pages, with the, non-traditional kind of panels, and again, it's great layout. And it's funny, I keep going back to this one page of, in the opening salvo with, Bruce standing there on top. He's got the fireworks behind him, and the shadow is kind of covering his face. The Bat is the shadows, but even this, he's got some bright light highlighting behind him, but it still does a really cool shadow effect on it. So this right here, this full page spread where he's just standing there, the fireworks behind him, that's a poster, flat out. But also later on, when you get that one page where he's talking to Oracle, and again, I love just this friendly, open dialogue that he's having with Oracle, and eventually even Nightwing, chimes in a little bit. But just the multi-page panel spread where you've got that really cool focus of Bruce swinging, to the point where you kind of got a, homage to the Dark Knight Returns panel, whereas that famous him flying over the moon. Soaring through this, swinging through the skies with the moon as the background, but you can't lose, the great artwork doesn't lose the neat conversation that he's having with Oracle about, take a day off, take some time off. And I love how Bruce says something feels off about Gotham. And she's like, I love that you see people having fun and get suspicious about it. It's that really cool open dialogue that she and Bruce can have with each other. But
he's right with the Batman Inc. piece, because it actually, everything that he's seeing is right. It was cool to see, though, that to the larger Batman universe, I love Oracle's role now, because with no Alfred in the equation, you need people like this for Bruce. I'm glad that it's Oracle. I like where they're evolving her, where she is still can be Batgirl when necessary, but she's taking and embracing the Oracle role a bit more because of what we've seen her go through physically in recent years, and I love it. I am really happy with her relationship with Nightwing. I loved that Nightwing actually made an appearance, and there was the tete-a-tete between them, which was really great. One of my favorite sequences was in Bandisha? I'm horribly butchering this. Wherever he went to. And you see him step out in Bruce Wayne mode. And that's where the artwork really works too. And you get to see this Detective Kaya? I'm going to butcher names terribly of characters that
I'm no help because I'm no help on that one.
Yeah. But I love these characters because it's one of the things that I love about jet-setting Batman when you get that in these stories is you get this kind of sense of adventure, this sense of wonder, and a reaction to Batman that is very unique to that situation because Batman isn't always in their world. They would be aware of Batman, but he's even more of a legend in a place like this because this isn't his normal place of operation. I love just the reaction with them. I like how they start working together in kind of a police-like capacity, where he's able to tell, which is the hard part, he's like, they did it. They killed Abyss. And you can tell that by just looking around for a few seconds. Dark Ranger, The Hood, El Gaucho, Batman of China, Man of Bats, are all heroes. What turned them into killers? And he's trying to place this all out. And I did not expect where this was going to go. I did not expect Lex Luthor to show up on the scene. What do you think about this take on Lex Luthor? I thought that the art styling, you're seeing a kind of a svelte, very confident, almost anti-Bruce, in the sense that, he's got the money, he's got the power, he's walking in on the scene, and boy, is Lex a presence at the end of this.
Oh, God, yeah. And I'll tell you, you always wonder, how much does Lex know? Does Lex know that that's Bruce, or does Lex not know? And I always love that when you get stories between Bruce and Lex, because there is that, billionaire connection. There is that double life that they each live. And you always wonder, which Lex Luthor are we getting right now? Are we getting the Lex Luthor who, yes, he's a bad guy. Yes, he will kill people, but he sometimes does it for the right reasons. And that's the thing that makes him such a great villain, in that he doesn't see himself as the villain. He sees himself as the hero. He's trying to save the day. Now, what he's willing to do to save the day is completely different from what Bruce and Clark will do. They have the no-kill code. Lex doesn't have that. Now, is he behind them? Is he behind Batman ain't killing? Or is it just one of those coincidences that he shows up? Are there no coincidences with Lex Luthor? You don't know. And that's what makes this such a powerful adversary for Bruce, that we don't know which one we're getting. And we don't know is Lex ultimately behind it. Who is this Abyss? He's been terrorizing this city, this country for the last year. So we've got a villain that we've got to learn about. So we're going to learn about the villain. We're going to learn about Lex's connection. Did he 100% just do it just to throw it in Bruce's face saying, you couldn't fund him anymore, but I still can? Or is there another motive that Lex had? Because you never know with Luthor. He's playing chess. He doesn't play checkers. It's, one move, him acquiring Batman Inc., him supporting Batman Inc. was the opening move for something 10 moves down the line. So what was that? And it's just the fact that adding him to this whole mystery really tweaks and changes what we're going to get out of this. Because before you're looking at it thinking, okay, this Abyss did something to turn these heroes into killers. Maybe not now. Maybe it was Lex. Maybe it was something else. Maybe it was a combination of all of the above. I don't know. And I think that for me is something that I'm very excited to find out.
Yeah, it's interesting for Joshua Williamson to take over this book, especially with all the storytelling that's come before, and deliver something out of this issue that is exactly what I was hoping. What I didn't know that I was hoping for. You know what I mean? Because you walk in and you saw the Batman. I've seen the preview art of the cover before, so you immediately see the Batman Inc. related costume and are like, is he going there with it? He did, in a way that I totally didn't expect and I'm totally excited about. And that's something that is hard to do, I think, to surprise, yet at the same time, in a very satisfying way, deliver everything that you want. This issue being an introductory issue to his run delivered a lot. Gave a real lay of the land of what Gotham currently is right now, which I think is really, really critical and important. Did a good job of setting up this run. I loved it. I mean, oof.
Oh, God, yeah. And I'll tell you, one of the pages that I absolutely loved was when Oracle asked Bruce, what do you normally do after solving a big case? And they do that splash page of him with Gordon sitting at the top and him and Robin, down in the Batcave laughing. They show Duke licking Robin's face, the picture of him and Selena kissing, him and Clark in the fortress, and then him and Alfred just playing a game of chess. I loved that panel. That, again, that's another poster that, this issue alone, right there is 2 posters I would love to have up on the wall.
But also, none of that's available to him.
Right.
There's not a single component there that's available to him. Superman, we know where he's at. Commissioner Gordon's off doing Joker things. Damian's doing his own thing. We've got Catwoman, and they're on a break, and Alfred's no longer with us. It's such a beautiful page, but shows how much Bruce has lost in that time. It's hard when you've lost all of that to then see people coming together with something new, because it does put him in that, which felt very real. It puts him in the third wheel situation. Barbara and Dick were doing exactly what any good friends, any good family members should do. They offered it. They opened the door. But you can also understand Bruce not taking it and why. Mm-hmm. It's that balancing act of, I think you have to offer and hope that the person might take advantage of it, but I can also understand the awkwardness. We've all been there at some point in time or the other where we've been on both ends of the spectrum, right? And everywhere in between. And I loved how real that moment felt. That's something that comics capture really well, is real human moments like that. And they're really critical if you're trying to create this as a three-dimensional, living, thriving world. You need to have those in. And those 2 pages right there back to back were so human, really established kind of that mood of, these are real people.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Oh, big time. Big time. And it's funny because not even just cool story being told. They did some great action sequences with the Billionaires Club that had the themes of the villains, and people were robbing. The robbers were showing up in costume, so Bruce shows up in costume, but not his. Shows up as Killer Croc, and Croc is just, he's just being Batman, kicking everyone's butt, and then finally they realize who it is. They're like, oh, no. I absolutely love that sequence because, again, beautiful story, artwork that really showed the physical violence, but also the majesty that is the chaos of the battle. And I love when artists can capture that fluidity, that motion, that fighting, and you're sitting there staring at this flat page, and it seems like it moves for you. So that's why, I'll tell you, I so loved the previous run, but from issue 1, I'm like, okay, we are continuing on with some Batman love going on, man. I'm 100% all in on the new team. Not only just story, but also artwork. I'm 100%, into where this is going to go. So, bravo on this first issue. I'm like, yes, this is what I wanted. I wanted to keep the energy up. I didn't want to, I was on such a high from the end of the Fear State to, I want to keep that energy going, and they kept it up. And that's something that's amazing.
Wait, Billionaire's Ball. Who shows up as Scarecrow? Isn't that like the definition of too soon? Like,
yeah, I think so.
So they're going, we just went through, like, I get that you're celebrating and all that, but, like, listen, I've had this Scarecrow costume in the closet, and there's like 20 of them that have it. What a great chance to finally pull that out and use it, right? Because, I mean, what store is selling that? Like, I got a great idea. We just went through Fear State. Let's sell a bunch of Scarecrow outfits.
Yeah.
You got to question if they already had that or they one of the devotees that he had under his spell.
It could be a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B going on.
Gotham is a wacky, wacky place.
Yes.
I mean, the Joker one you could argue might still be a little too soon. After that, you kind of go, all right, maybe a little bit of time has passed with this whole Joker thing. I guess it's okay to maybe wear a Joker outfit, but Scarecrow, really?
And here's the funny thing with me in Gotham. Mm-hmm. I've said multiple times I would never live in Gotham. Mm-hmm. But if I ever had to visit Gotham, I would never in a million years put on a Joker costume. There's not an amount of money you can pay me just because that's something that Joker would find offensive. And that's something you would make a permanent enemy out of the Joker. I would never do anything like that. There was this one issue, I can't even remember which Bat book it was, but it was this talk they had they were talking about how this one talk show did this routine about the talk radio, where they did this routine where insulting the Penguin. And the talk show host was, one of those shock jocks trying to be funny. He was a guy. He was new to Gotham, and he did this shocking radio bit about the Penguin. The next day, the guy is dangling from this clock tower, and Bruce is swinging in to save him, and this and that, and people were dead, and there's this massive body count, and it was like, that's the kind of stuff you get from the Gotham villains. Right. I would never do anything like this.
Right. Yeah, it's like, why? Why would you do that? It's crazy. Yeah. So it's. This is a great opening issue. It's funny, I said before, I had a lot of faith in Joshua Williamson as a writer. That being said, you always have this anticipation until you actually read, like, the first issue of the run. Not is it going to deliver or anything like that, but what is it going to really be like? You know your faith and confidence, but when it surpasses your feelings, that's something that is always special. The first issue this has me really excited for issue 2 and going forward. Because Batman's been a consistently the go-to Batman book, which that's not knocking detective at all. I love detective comics. It's my jam every month. It's Batman, obviously. But the primary Batman book has been Batman. And it's weird to say that when you've got such great writing going on in Detective Comics right now. The events have taken place in this book proper. So when you're following up the run that we just had with this, they've already got a story that has me excited. And Detective equally. They've got a brand new arc that's going on with that's going to be fun to watch as well. So I'm just excited. This is a good time to be a comic fan.
Yes,
and
it is.
It really, really is. And I say that both in and out of DC. I'm reading more comics now than I've read in a long time. And consistently, one of the things, it's been consistent that I've continually read comics. Right now, I'm reading a lot of stuff both in and out of DC. I'm just really enjoying the output that we're getting right now. I don't know if you're having the same experience, but it's been a real fun time to pick up comics.
Oh, man, I'm enjoying my reading. It's one of those things where I wish I had more time. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to find little moments when I could read. Like, I start my day off reading one book. When I wake up, I'm getting ready to log into work. I've got a whole, because I work from home now, I've got a whole connection I got to do, which takes a couple minutes. So what I'll do is I'll grab a book and I'll read it while I'm doing my connection, because I got all the uploading and all that kind of stuff to do every day. So I found I had a couple minutes that I could read. And then at the end of the day, I read another book because I'm like, my day is done. I log off my computer, and that's how I use that moment to just unwind from the day. So I'm trying to find time when I could actually sit down and read and just enjoy, and just calm down and have those moments. And sometimes at night, after I'm done with my day before I go to bed, I'll read an issue or read 2 or something like that. So for me, my comic reading has been absolutely stellar, and I'm so far behind on all these books, and I've got non-DC stuff that I'm finding more and more. People are saying, "Hey, give this a try." Hey, yeah, sure, let me jump on that. And there's so much out there now that finding something to read is not difficult. Finding time to read it, that's the hard part.
Yeah, it's funny. We talk about the economics of money for comics, but you're right. Economics of time, we've talked about this on the show before, is really the hardest. I am reading in the weirdest way now. Because, I was doing for a while what you were doing, where I was doing the issues to read in the morning And I'm doing that, but in a strange way. I have this weird sleep cycle now. Coming home from work, I'm working, I'm going to focus a lot more on health. So, I'll work out, I'll eat dinner, I'll hang out with my wife for a while. We'll end up watching something together, just hang out and visit and that type of thing. I'll ultimately crash, like on the couch or something like that. I inevitably wake up at like 3:15 in the morning. And I mean, this is pretty consistent, like not intentional. You'd think I'd go upstairs and go to sleep. It's not. I'm crashing and waking up. So then I'll go upstairs and I'm like awake.
Yeah.
I know that I need to like sleep again, at least for like another hour or so, just to, finish off my night. What do? Read a couple comics.
Yeah.
And it's, it's been it's like this weird middle of the night thing that I'll do. When I do go upstairs at like a rational hour, I will read to go to bed at night. And I love reading at night. It's kind of like my favorite thing to do. It's always been since I was a kid, my favorite thing to do. It's probably where I butchered my eyes. Because I used to read by a flashlight as a kid, I would read comics. And clearly didn't have enough light because, I've got contacts now and things like that. And I'm sure it's due to butchering my eyes. But, nighttime now with iPads and stuff like that, you can, it's very easy to read at night. And I've got this cool little, for my paper books, it's called a e-sunlight. And it goes around your neck, like behind your neck. And it's got two lights, one on each side, that you can turn individually on or off. And it's like the perfect reading book light because it comes at your neck level. So if you're holding the book, it's very easy for you to they're bendable. So you can adjust it to your perfect, whatever your posture is at that point in time. So it's great because I bought one of these lap pillows that you can use for either a book or for an iPad. It keeps it at the set level. So it's nice because I'm able to do just all of my reading, comic book, novels, otherwise, with this cool little thing.
That's awesome.
But I'm finding I'm reading a lot at night. I wish I had more time like you. That's not believe me, it'd be nice if I could read all day long because of the amount of stuff that I'd like to read. Because I want to read more classic stuff too. Which I do jump back from time to time to things like I'm still making my way through another read through of Fables. I'm reading my way through Sandman again still. And I'm reading things like they've been releasing the current X-Men run in these collected editions that go chronological. So it's not like just the single X-Men title. It's all of the titles, but in their storyline, release order kind of thing. And I'm greatly enjoying reading those from time to time. Chip Zdarsky had a really good Daredevil run. I'm reading that. Getting caught up on things like Wonder Woman. We're doing a two-parter coming up on Wonder Woman. Been reading that. Staying caught up on my DC stuff. The DC horror stuff that they're releasing now under that label has been really terrific. So it's just a ton of great comics out there. Valiant's producing some really, seem to be relaunching their line, if that makes any sense, or a new, I guess probably the best thing to say is it's kind of like this new season of their line, and they've been gradually putting new titles back in, like Shadow Man, Exo Man of War. They just released The Harbinger. And they're really great creative teams that are putting together real high-quality books. So these are things that I've just been really digging and enjoying. It's to your point, it's a great time. And you know what else I'm digging? These Comixology originals that are out there are they're producing some really cool high quality stuff with some big name talent.
Yes.
There's a lot out there to read, and I love that. And two other books that I'll shout out that I'm reading that I'm really enjoying. The current James Bond comic that's out there. There's an Assassin's Creed manga that's out there, I don't know, that I'm really digging. It's a 2-volume set, at least 2 volumes right now. I'm making my way through that. And you read it backwards, for us, backwards. It's forwards. That's the way that they're used to reading it. And I'm really enjoying that. And then the last one is the current Doctor Who comic that's out is tremendous. I'm really digging that as well. So a lot of stuff. I mean, it's to your point, the economics of time is a very, very hard component out there. But there's something for everybody. This is an era where that's why I get sad when I see people that spend so much of their time being crabby about comics. I'm not saying you can't be critical. Don't get me wrong on that. It's, again, equal devotion to, are you not digging anything? Get out there and get the word out tell people about the things you like. Protect them. Get the word out, because there's not a comic out there, whether it's the top seller or the lowest numbered seller out there. There's not a book out there that can't use some form of nod. So let people know that these books are out there. Let people know that you are enjoying these books. It's really important right now to get the word out about great comics. This is like Batman. I would not hesitate to recommend to people right now. And I don't, when we talk about the big two, Marvel and DC right now, I'm sorry, the numbers for the big two right now, they need help too.
Yeah.
And I say that with all respect and love to independents. They need that much more. But all of comics needs notice right now. We need to really make people aware that this is a very viable medium. They're producing amazing, terrific stories, and that people should be checking out all of comics for the stories that they're looking for. So, good stuff.
Holy caffeine!
I would like to remind everyone about our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434 or Dr. Norge on Skype. If there's a topic or conversation you'd like to have on our show, certainly become a part of it and call us. RagingBullets@gmail.com is our show email address. If that's the easier way to contact us, RagingBullets.com is our show website. That's where we want to deliver you the news on the upcoming episodes. As soon as they come out, that's how you're going to find out about them. We fish that out to Twitter and our Facebook fan page. We are also proud to be part of an amazing Facebook group community. I endlessly love shouting that out because the people that are there, it's their community. They've made it what it is. I go there to really that's the first spot I go to find out my news. And I want to thank everyone that takes the time to post there and the conversation that goes on there, because it's a safe, fun place. And thank you to everybody who's a part of that great community over there. Jim, we're sponsored as always by DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. What's going on over at DCBService.com?
Gotham City Central Omnibus, the full series hardcover, 50% off, only $49.99. Batman Volume 5, Fear State hardcover, 50% off, only $12.49. Thank you, DCBS.
InStockTrades.com has Batman Urban Legends Trade Paperback Volume 1, $24.99 regularly, 42% off, only $14.49. Saga of the Swamp Thing box set, $120 regularly, 42% off, only $69.60. What a savings there. The Swamp Thing Trade Paperback Volume 1, The Becoming, $16.99 regularly, 42% off, only $9.85. If you missed any of these books, this is the way to find them and get them at a discount. Be sure to browse around and check out the amazing deals that you can find at InStockTrades.com. And I want to thank both companies for continuing to support our show. I also want to remind everyone about the About Us section of our show website. That's how you can connect to us on all of social media and gaming platforms as well. We love to connect with you. Jim, I want to shout out as well the Ignition 1-3 Kickstarter. This is longtime friend Shawn Pryor. He really does a great job of doing these unique creator-owned properties. And this one totally reads like an action movie. And I urge you to click on the link. It's in our show notes. Check out the trailer that's there. Get an idea about this story. I love these kind of transporter action sequences that are in there. I love these kind of movies. He's brought this world to life in a comic. I love creators who are able to bring this sense of motion, high-speed action, danger into, and this is a 56-page finale. If you did not read issues 1 and 2, you can grab all 3 issues in this Kickstarter campaign. Please shout this out. The way that these Kickstarter campaigns make it is from word of mouth. And if this is something where maybe financially you can't support it time-wise right now, you likely know somebody who will. Every little bit helps. It's one of the things we always ask our community to do. Please help get this over the hump. Give Shawn the money that he needs to be able to produce this. It's a strength of our community, and I really appreciate everyone for supporting this project. It's one of the cool things about Kickstarters nowadays is creator-owned work. More creator-owned work is coming out now than ever before because of this opportunity to get it funded, and I'd like to see this one make it because I'm a big fan of Shawn as a person, and I'm a big fan of his work, which is, this is something I believe in. Thank you for everyone who gets the word out about this. Our next episode, Jim and I are going to begin a 2-part look at Wonder Woman. There's been a lot of changes going on in Wonder Woman's world. We're going to look at the Wonder Woman main title. We're going to be taking a look at Wonder Girl. We're going to take a look at Nubia. And we're going to take a look at the recently released Themyscira series that's out there, the big prestige series that's out there. So we got a lot to talk about with Wonder Woman, and we're going to begin that 2-part look starting next week. We will see you then.
Bye.
All right, you guys. Are you ready to sing your song?
I'd say we are. Yeah, let's sing it now.
Okay, this should be fun. Now get ready for your cue. Okay, Shawn?
Okay.
Okay, Jim? Jim? Jim!
Okay. Raging bullets time is here. We talk about what we hold dear. Comic books and TV shows. Superheroes and their clothes. Justice League and so much more. I just love Green Lantern Corps. We talk about the books we've read with spoilers straight ahead.
Okay, fellas, get ready. That was very good, Shawn.
Naturally.
Jim, you're a little flat there, so be careful. Jim? Jim? Jim!
Okay. Justice League and so much more. I still love Green Lantern Corps. DC Comics are what we know. The Raging Bullet Show. DC Comics are what we know. The Raging Bullet Show.
Excellent job, guys.
Let's sing it again. Yeah, let's sing it again.
No, that's enough. Let's not push it.
Push it. What is that? Yeah, what are you talking about?
No, I didn't mean anything by that.
I think you're going to do it.
Jim, how long do you want the song to go?
Look, it's our production.